Hi guys, welcome back to Read Instead. I'm Jake. Glad to have you here today. I wanted to make a video today of some unpopular opinions of mine. So stay tuned. Alright guys, so welcome back to another edition of Read Instead. I hope everybody's reading instead on this American holiday. Happy Columbus Day to everyone. Man, I really needed this day off. I still got this this cold going on. It like moved from my head down to my chest. I don't know what's going on. There's a plague upon my house right now. My kids aren't feeling that well either. So this Columbus Day, this extended weekend really came at a nice time for me. So I hope all of you in America are also enjoying this day off. Maybe spending some time in a book. Quickly, let me just address the elephant in the room. The last video that I posted on my immediate reaction to the book Swan Song by Robert McCammon, I realized was pretty blurry. I must have forgotten to wipe the lens on my phone. That's the only thing I can think of. So I do apologize. I was considering maybe taking it down and redoing the video. But what I think I'll do, I'll just leave that up. I hope you guys will still check it out. But probably further along, down the road, I'll make another, I'll just do like a full, instead of an immediate reaction review of Swan Song, I'll do just like a natural review. And because that book deserves it. That book was really, really good. Again, 900 pages of, it was a 900-page book, and it felt like it was 400 pages. It just flew by because it was riveting all the way through. Just an awesome book by Robert McCammon, Swan Song. Quick update on what I'm reading. I mentioned to you guys there's about 9 books that I want to try to finish before the end of 2024. So after I finished Swan Song, I picked up Charles Frazier's Cold Mountain, and I am about a quarter of the way into that. I'm enjoying it. This is a piece of literature. That's what it is. And I know we often use that term, literature. I believe R.L. Stein's Goosebumps can be considered literature. I don't, but I think when people use that word, what they mean is that it's high, lofty language that wants to sort of evoke a certain emotion and paint the landscape and the emotions of the characters in a certain way, and it's just beautiful. That's the best way I can describe this book right now, Cold Mountain, is that it's just beautifully written, and I'm enjoying it because something can be beautifully written, but then the plot can take like a way back seat to just somebody trying to just use lofty language and high prose, which then I lose interest. If there's no real plot, then I lose interest, or even the characters can sometimes take a back seat to high lofty prose. Which again, that's not happening. I'm invested in the characters. There's really only two or three characters that have been introduced so far in Cold Mountain, and I'm enjoying it. So that's what I'm reading right now. But without further ado, these are 7 books that I picked out that I don't love. I'm not gonna say I hated them or I really disliked them. That's sort of too strong of language. Well, maybe I did. I don't know. Maybe a couple of them I did dislike, and if I did, then I'll let you know. But they are otherwise books that I think are pretty renowned, and most people would grade highly. And for some reason, they just didn't connect with me. I'll try to explain to you guys why they didn't connect with me. But again, without further ado, let's start on 7 books that are unpopular opinions of mine. Okay, first up, a book by Alice Sebold. Highly regarded book. It was made into a movie. It's called The Lovely Bones. And I remember reading this book, and I remember getting like a quarter of the way into it and thinking that this book was going to be a murder mystery sort of investigative sort of book. And man, it is like the furthest thing from that. It's a pretty sort of poignant and tragic book. It's about a family who loses a daughter, And a lot of the perspective of this book is from the daughter, the girl who died in a heavenly realm. So, try to wrap your head around that. And then, basically there is solving sort of the murder that happened to her. The book kind of bounces around from, in different times. But really, at the end of it, it just turns into a story about the bond of family and like the strength of family and family getting through, tragedy, which is fine. That's there's nothing wrong with that in itself. But just for me personally, it didn't, I don't know. I was just expecting something different in the beginning, and then I kept reading, and then it just was like that. And I was like, okay. That wasn't really what I was expecting, and for some reason this book just didn't click with me all too much. Okay, next on the list, A Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I feel like I'm probably not alone too much in this opinion in this day and age. From what I gather and from what I understand, that this book, was written in I believe it was the early 50s. It takes place like a few years before that, in the late 40s, I believe, right after World War II. And then it made a real strong resurgence in like the 60s and 70s. Famously and unfortunately and tragically, the Mark David Chapman, the murderer of John Lennon, famously had this book with him when he killed John Lennon. And actually, after he shot John Lennon, he sat down and started reading this book. If that's not something to turn you off from this book, I don't know what is, but just, you know what it is? And I can understand why this book sort of exploded and became sort of a cultural iconic book after it was written, because there was a movement of sort of youthful rebellion, right? Like in the late 60s and stuff like that. And that's sort of the main character, Holden, of this book is sort of a teen who rebels. But here's the thing, right? I read this book in 2021 when I was 34 years old. And my opinion of Holden was that he was just a spoiled, I mainly thought he was just a spoiled brat. Sort of self-entitled and I don't know if I want to use the word like a wuss, but yeah, he kind of was that, and I'm just, I don't know, I think you need to read this book to really connect with it. You need to read it when you're a teenager. I could understand why younger people could connect with it, but I just didn't connect with it in that way. So number 2 on the list is J.D. Salinger's A Catcher in the Rye. Well, we might as well just get the classics right out of the way, right? F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. I read this I remember this was reading curriculum in high school. I read this again later on. I don't know, not a real interesting plot. Like a guy moves in to a neighborhood on Long Island, and he's next to a real rich guy who throws crazy parties, and it's just like the plot just wasn't there for me. I understand that it captures a lot. I don't know if this book was super popular when it came out in the 1920s, and I understand that decades and decades later, if a book can bring you back to a certain decade, like the Roaring 20s in the United States, especially in like high society New York, and that's enjoyable to read. I get that, and you know what? I even grasped that as I read it, that it sort of brings you back to that. That was a very unique decade, the Roaring 20s in the United States, right? And this book does sort of bring you back to that and it lets you sort of taste it. But that just wasn't enough for me. I mean, this is like an American classic. This book is a staple in American literature, and it just wasn't hugely entertaining for me. There was some sort of allegory at the end of the book that sort of speaks to the one finding prosperity in America and sort of the pursuit of happiness, that kind of thing, which I appreciated. But again, just not hugely entertaining for me. Okay, next on the list, Dennis Lehane's Mystic River. I don't know what I can really say about this, why I didn't connect with it so much. I think one of the aspects of it is that, this takes place in Boston, and that's like in my backyard basically, and I sort of grew up, in the suburbs of Boston, so I can understand someone not from this area. Dennis Lehane really uses the Boston backdrop as sort of its own character in this novel, like a lot of novelists will do in their setting. The setting is sort of a character in itself. Like when I read Michael Conley books, and he uses Los Angeles and the area around Los Angeles to sort of be a character in the book, I really can connect with that, because that's exotic to me, So Boston isn't exotic to me in any way. I would say, I don't want to use this term like run-of-the-mill mystery, because I feel bad using that, but there wasn't, I don't know, the connection between what happens with the main characters when they're kids and then they grow older, and I don't know, I just wasn't as riveted by that as maybe some people were. I feel like this is a pretty renowned mystery novel, and of course it was made into a movie that won Academy Awards and stuff like that. I didn't dislike it. I'm not going to say I disliked it, but this was a 3-star read for me out of 5. So fourth on the list, Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. Okay, I read this book about a year ago. 5th on the list, it's Neil Gaiman's American Gods. Again, this is one of his most popular books. Came out in 2001. It won like fantasy awards and stuff like that. First of all, I remember writing this in my review on Goodreads, that you sort of have to have, I feel like you have to have some knowledge and understanding of like world religions and mythical folklore, especially like Norse mythology, like of the different gods in religion and in societies and in culture and stuff like that. If you don't have that, I feel like you'd miss a lot. And this book is just filled with allegory. That's what it is. It's like imagery that is supposed to sort of mean something else, and I don't know. I couldn't, And again, it's not that I disliked it. I just when it was all said and done and I closed it, I just thought there wasn't really one point in the book where I was really highly entertained and riveted. So. Sorry to Neil Gaiman. I'll try another Neil Gaiman book at some point, but American Gods, this will be the 5th book on the list. American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Okay, that brings us to book number 6 on my list. Donna Tartt. Donna Tartt has only written less than 5 books, I believe, in her novel career as a novelist. This is one of them, A Secret History, or The Secret History, excuse me. This came out in the early 90s. She wrote another book called Goldfinch that won tons of awards. I think it won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction, if I'm not mistaken. This book, highly renowned, highly regarded. It was advertised to me anyway as a mystery. First of all, you find out what happened, who killed who and that sort of stuff. You find that out not at the end of the book, like well before it. So there's not a great mystery that you're trying to figure out throughout this book. This was more of just a character study of a specific type of person, and the person is a middle-class kid from the West Coast going to the East Coast to a prestigious boarding high school. And I'm familiar with these schools because they're around, around Massachusetts. There's these they're like the best high schools really in the world. Not a lot of people around here know about them. The only reason I know about them is because I had some friends through friends sort of thing, and I sort of connected with some kids from these schools when I was in high school. But they're sort of hidden away back in the woods and in the mountains, and they cost like $60,000 a year to go to, and kids from all over the world go there. These very highly prestigious schools that you would imagine sort of a lot of stuck up kids and kids from wealthy families and stuff go to. So you have this kid, middle class kid kind of comes from a screwed up family, but gets a scholarship to go to this school, and it's sort of like more of a character study through that person. And I guess it sort of created a cultural a sort of type of people. I remember reading about this book after, and I'm like trying to figure out why it connected with so many people. And I guess it created it created a style, if that makes sense. And that style is I don't know. That style is like, I go to a really expensive and prestigious school, and I don't care, and I'm gonna dress like I'm gonna wear my pajamas all day and just drink and do drugs all day or something. I don't know. Beautifully written. I mean, she's just a dynamite writer. There's no question about that. But this book, wasn't something that was gonna stick with me for the rest of my life. That's for sure. Number 6 on the list, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Okay, last on the list, number 7. Stephen King fans, please don't throw a brick through my window. The Shining. Listen, I thought I enjoyed the movie, Stanley Kubrick's 1980 movie, more than I enjoyed this novel. To be honest with you, the most sort of riveting part of this book for me was, and I can't think of his name right now, but the gentleman that works at the resort, the lodge, that first notices that the boy has the Shining, in him, and he ends up, I think he goes to Florida, like on a vacation or something like that, but then he makes his way back it's like a race against time, because he knows something's not right, something's going to go down in this place. That aspect of the novel is probably the most like sort of riveting for me, and it was like more of a thriller. I mean, out of the 15 or so Stephen King books that I've read, this would be certainly on the lower, the last 5. I didn't, and again, I think it's because I think most Stephen King fans, and I've watched, other YouTubers, top 10 Stephen King books and stuff like that, and most of the time, this book is always like in the top 3. Yeah, I couldn't connect with it in that way. So sorry about that. Last on the list is The Shining by Stephen King. Okay. So one thing I just want to get across to you guys, just because, please, hear me out. Just because these books didn't connect with me doesn't mean that they won't connect with you. So I hope this was just supposed to be a fun video to maybe show you guys a little bit more about myself and, my reading habits and sort of what I tend to connect with and whatnot. But that does not mean that we share those opinions. By the way, like all these books that I just read, I read because they were highly reviewed, and I was encouraged to read them by other people. So obviously, I'm in the minority on my, my opinions are the minority on all these books. So please don't let this video discourage you from reading any of these books if you think you might want to. So that's it for today, guys. Those are 7 books that I have unpopular opinions of. Again, I hope that you guys are reading something instead of just spending hours and hours a day on social media or looking at a screen. That's what this channel is all about. I'll see you next time. Take care.